Pete Jackson worked for 3 hours to stabilize Kethvar's condition before attempting to move the alien. The portable life support equipment hummed quietly in the damaged ship, while Pete carefully monitored the alien's vital signs. Kethvar drifted in and out of consciousness, but the immediate danger of death had passed. When Pete finally loaded the alien onto a medical transport stretcher, Kethvar's eyes opened and focused on his rescuer's face. The translator device was barely working, producing only fragments of speech, but the alien managed to convey something important. "Must tell you," Kethvar whispered weakly. "Not accident. This meeting was planned." Pete looked up from his equipment with confusion. "What do you mean, planned?" Kethvar struggled to speak through the failing translator. "My people sent me to find humans, to test your character. We have been watching your species for many years." "Watching us?" Pete asked as he secured the alien for transport. "Why?" "To see if you are ready," came the broken reply. "Ready for contact with Galactic community. We needed to know what kind of people humans really are." Pete felt his heart race as he understood what Kethvar was telling him. "This whole thing was a test?" The alien's head moved in what might have been a nod. "Crashed ship was real accident, but I volunteered for dangerous mission. My people wanted to see how humans respond to helpless alien in need of aid." Pete stared at the alien in amazement. The implications of what he was hearing made his head spin. "And what did you learn?" Kethvar's eyes looked directly into Pete's. "I learned that some humans will risk everything to save stranger. That is what we hope to find." The journey back to the Aurora took 40 minutes. Pete used the time to think about what Kethvar had revealed. If this had been a test of human character, then what grade had humanity received? His captain and crew had chosen to follow regulations rather than provide aid, but Pete himself had disobeyed orders to make the rescue. As his shuttle approached the Aurora's landing bay, Pete could see security teams waiting for him. The moment he landed, armed guards surrounded his shuttle while Commander Walsh stormed across the deck. "Jackson, you are under arrest for insubordination, violation of first contact protocols, and mutiny," Danny announced as Pete emerged from the shuttle. "Surrender your weapons and prepare to be confined pending court-martial." Pete handed over his sidearm without resistance. "Commander, before you arrest me, you need to know something important. This alien has information that could change everything. Save it for your defense attorney," Danny replied coldly. "Guards, escort the prisoner to the brig." "Wait," came a weak voice from inside the shuttle. Kethvar had managed to activate some kind of emergency device hidden in its clothing. The device produced a piercing signal that filled the shuttle bay with harmonic tones. Dr. Amy Roberts pushed through the crowd of security personnel and knelt beside the alien. "It is trying to communicate something," she said urgently. "We need to get it to medical bay immediately." "Nobody touches that alien without proper authorization," Danny ordered. "It could be dangerous." Amy looked up at him with fury in her eyes. "It is dying, you fool. Whatever information it has will be lost if we do not help it right now." Captain Morrison appeared at the edge of the crowd, his face grim with anger and frustration. "What is the status of the alien?" "Stable but critical," Amy reported. "Pete's medical intervention saved its life, but it needs advanced treatment if it is going to survive." Jake looked at Pete, who stood between two guards with his hands secured behind his back. "Sergeant, you have violated direct orders and potentially endangered this entire ship. I hope you think your alien friend was worth throwing your career away." "Yes, sir," Pete replied without hesitation. "I do think it was worth it." Before Jake could respond, Kethvar's emergency device began producing new sounds. The harmonic tones shifted and changed, creating a pattern that somehow felt familiar and comforting. "Captain," Lisa Grant called from her portable communications unit, "I am reading massive energy signatures approaching our position. Something big is coming out of hyperspace." The shuttle bay fell silent as everyone processed what Lisa had said. Through the transparent aluminum windows, they could see stars beginning to shift and blur as something enormous dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The ship that appeared was unlike anything humans had ever seen. It was easily 10 times larger than the Aurora, with smooth curves and glowing panels that pulsed with soft light. Strange symbols covered its hull, similar to the ones Pete had seen on Kethvar's crashed vessel. "This is the UES Aurora," Jake broadcast on all frequencies. "Unknown vessel, please identify yourself and state your intentions." The response came immediately in perfect English. "This is the Andorian research vessel Harmony. We have come to retrieve our colleague Kethvar and to make formal contact with your species." Jake felt his world turn upside down as the implications hit him. "You are here for the alien we found?" "We are here because one of your people chose to save the life of our researcher," came the reply. "Kethvar volunteered for a dangerous mission to test the moral character of your species. The results have been most interesting." Amy looked up from where she knelt beside Kethvar. "Captain, the alien is trying to speak." Kethvar's translator device flickered back to life as power flowed from some hidden source. "My people judge species not by their governments or military leaders, but by the actions of individuals when faced with moral choices. Your sergeant has shown us what we needed to see." Commander Walsh stepped forward, his face pale with understanding. "You mean this whole thing was designed to test us?" "The crash was accidental," Kethvar explained weakly. "But my mission was to assess human character. My people have been debating whether to make contact with your species for many years. We needed to know if humans could be trusted with membership in the galactic community." Jake felt his legs go weak as he realized what had almost happened. "And if we had left you to die? Then we would have concluded that humans were not ready for contact," Kethvar replied. "Many species fail this test. They choose fear over compassion, safety over moral courage." The alien's large eyes focused on Pete Jackson, who still stood between his guards. But this human chose differently. He risked his career, his freedom, perhaps his life to save a stranger. That is the character trait we value most highly. Captain Morrison looked at Pete with new understanding. "You knew this might happen when you disobeyed my orders?" Pete shook his head. "No, sir, I had no idea this was a test. I just knew that letting someone die when I could help them was wrong." "Which makes your choice even more significant," came a new voice. An airlock had opened in the shuttle bay, and 3 tall figures in flowing robes had entered. They moved, with graceful steps toward Kethvar's stretcher. The lead figure removed its hood, revealing features similar to Kethvar's but older and more refined. "I am Ambassador Veltar of the Andorian Collective. We have come to formally welcome humanity into the galactic community." Amy stared at the aliens in wonder. "Because Pete saved Kethvar's life? Because your sergeant demonstrated that humans are capable of placing moral principles above personal safety," Veltar explained. "This is the foundation upon which all peaceful civilizations must be built." Jake looked around the shuttle bay at his crew's amazed faces. "What happens now?" Veltar gestured toward the massive ship visible through the windows. "Now we begin. A new chapter in human history. We offer medical technology that will eliminate most diseases, scientific knowledge that will advance your civilization by centuries, and membership in a community of peaceful species that spans the galaxy." Commander Walsh stepped forward with confusion on his face. "But most of us chose not to help. We followed regulations instead of helping Kethvar." "And that is exactly what we expected," Veltar replied. "Governments and military organizations must follow rules and procedures. But individuals must sometimes choose between following orders and doing what is right. Your sergeant chose correctly." Pete looked around at his colleagues, many of whom were staring at him with new respect. "What about my court-martial?" "Captain." Morrison walked over and personally removed Pete's restraints. "There will be no court-martial, Sergeant. Instead, I believe you are going to receive the highest commendation our government can award." Kethvar managed to lift one delicate hand toward Pete. "My friend, you have changed the course of history for both our species. Future generations will remember this moment as the beginning of a new age of cooperation and understanding." As medical personnel from both ships worked together to care for Kethvar, Pete Jackson stood in the shuttle bay and looked out at the stars. Somewhere among those points of light were worlds full of intelligent beings who now welcomed humanity as friends. and allies. All because one human soldier had refused to let fear stop him from doing what was right. Captain Jake Morrison stood alone in his ready room, staring at the regulation book open on his desk. General Order 7 was printed in black letters that seemed to burn into his eyes as he read them for the 10th time that day. Any vessel encountering evidence of non-human intelligence shall immediately cease all contact and withdraw to minimum safe distance while awaiting instructions from Earth Defense Command. The words were clear, but they felt cold and empty when Jake thought about Kethvar dying alone on that distant moon. He closed the book and walked to his window, looking out at the stars that had once seemed full of wonder and possibility. Soft chime announced someone at his door. "Come in," Jake called. Dr. Amy Roberts entered, her face set with determination. "Captain, I need to speak with you about our decision regarding the alien." Jake sighed and turned to face her. "Amy, we have already discussed this. My decision is final." "Your decision is wrong," Amy said flatly. "Sir, with all due respect, General Order 7 was written by people who never imagined this situation. They were thinking about hostile alien fleets, not one injured researcher who needs medical help. The order does not specify the circumstances. Doctor, it says any non-human intelligence, which includes injured researchers." Amy stepped closer to his desk. "Jake, listen to yourself. You are hiding behind regulations to avoid making a moral choice. That alien trusted us enough to ask for help, and we are going to let it die because of paperwork." The captain felt his anger rising. "It is not paperwork, Amy. It is military law designed to protect humanity from unknown threats. I took an oath to follow those laws, even when they are difficult." "What about your oath as a human being?" Amy shot back. "What about the promise we make to help others when we can? That alien is not a threat to anyone. It is scared and hurt and dying." Jake sat down heavily in his chair. "How do you know it is not a threat? Because it told you so? Because it looks helpless? Amy, for all we know, this could be some kind of test or trap. A trap that involves actually dying?" Amy's voice was full of disbelief. "Captain, my medical scanners do not lie. That alien's body is shutting down. Its organs are failing. If this is acting, then Kethvar deserves an award for the performance of the century." Before Jake could respond, another chime sounded. Commander Danny Walsh entered the room, looking grim but determined. "Captain, I wanted to tell you that I support your decision completely," Danny said. "This is exactly the kind of situation the regulations were designed for. We cannot let our emotions override our judgment." Amy whirled around to face him. "Emotions? Danny, we are talking about basic compassion for a living being in pain. When did caring about others become a weakness?" "When it started endangering our own people," Danny replied firmly. "Amy, you are a scientist, not a soldier. You do not understand the bigger picture here." "The bigger picture?" Amy's voice rose with anger. "The bigger picture is that we are about to become the species that discovered intelligent alien life and chose to let it die rather than risk helping it." Danny crossed his arms. "Better that than becoming the species that got wiped out because we trusted the wrong aliens." Lieutenant Kate Brown appeared in the doorway, having heard the raised voices. "Captain, may I join this discussion?" Jake waved her in, knowing that the argument was already beyond his control. "Go ahead, Kate. Everyone else is here." Kate looked around the room at the angry faces. "I have been thinking about this situation, and I keep coming back to one question. What would we want an alien species to do if one of our people crashed on their world?" "That is not the point," Danny said. "We cannot base military decisions on hypothetical situations." "It is exactly the point," Kate countered. "If we expect other species to show us mercy and kindness, then we have to be willing to show the same to them." Jake rubbed his temples as the headache he had been fighting all day grew worse. "Kate, I understand your position, but we have to follow the law. I do not have the authority to make first contact decisions for all of humanity." "You have the authority to save a life," Amy said quietly. "That should be enough." The room fell silent as everyone considered her words. Jake looked at each of his officers, seeing the conflict in their eyes. These were good people who wanted to do the right thing, but they could not agree on what that was. "Captain," Kate said carefully, "what if we found a middle ground? What if we provided medical aid but did not bring the alien aboard our ship?" Danny shook his head immediately. "Any aid would violate General Order 7. The regulation is clear about avoiding all contact." "The regulation is stupid," Amy said bluntly. "It was written by bureaucrats who never imagined finding a dying alien scientist. The regulation exists. For good reasons," Danny replied. "It protects us from making mistakes that could endanger our entire species." Jake stood up from his chair and walked back to the window. Outside he could see the distant glow of the moon where Kethvar lay dying. The alien signals had grown weaker over the past few hours, and Lisa reported that they might stop completely within the day. "I have made my decision," Jake said without turning around. "We will maintain our position and wait for instructions from Earth Defense Command. We will not provide aid to the alien." Amy stared at his back in shock. "Captain, by the time Earth responds, Kethvar will be dead. You know that." "I know that I am following my orders and protecting my crew," Jake replied. "That is my job, even when it is unpleasant." Kate stepped forward. "Sir, I formally request that my objection to this decision be entered into the ship's log." "Noted and denied," Jake said firmly. "This discussion is over. Everyone return to your stations." Amy looked like she wanted to say more, but Danny put a warning hand on her arm. "Come on, Doctor. The captain has spoken." As the officers filed out of the ready room, Jake remained at the window, watching the stars. He told himself that he was doing the right thing, following regulations and protecting his crew, but the words felt hollow in his mind. Down in the ship's medical bay, Amy sat at her desk and stared at the reports from Kethvar's failing life support systems. The alien's vital signs were getting weaker by the hour, and there was nothing she could do to help. Pete Jackson stood in the corridor outside the shuttle bay, looking at the small craft that could carry him back to the moon. His orders were clear, but his conscience was clearer. Every instinct he had as a human being told him that leaving Kethvar to die was wrong. The sergeant closed his eyes and thought about his childhood on Earth, growing up on stories of brave heroes who risked everything to help others in need. Those heroes never worried about regulations or orders when innocent lives were at stake. Lisa Grant monitored the aliens' transmissions from her station on the bridge, watching the signals grow weaker and more desperate. The translator device was failing, but she could still make out fragments of Kethvar's messages. "Please, help me. Do not let me die alone." The words cut through Lisa like knives, and she had to turn down the volume to keep from crying. Around her, the bridge crew went about their duties with grim faces, all of them aware of what was happening on the moon below. Captain Morrison returned to the bridge and took his command chair, trying to project confidence he did not feel. His crew looked at him with expressions ranging from disappointment to barely controlled anger. "Captain," Lisa reported quietly, "the alien signals are getting very weak. I estimate complete system failure within 6 hours." Jake nodded stiffly. "Understood. Continue monitoring and record everything for our report to Earth Defense Command." The bridge fell silent except for the soft sounds of the ship's systems. Everyone knew that they were watching an intelligent being die slowly, while they sat safely in their metal ship, protected by regulations and fear. Pete Jackson made his choice in that moment of silence. He could not be part of this. He would not let Kethvar die alone, no matter what the consequences might be. Pete Jackson moved quietly through the corridors of the Aurora, his heart pounding with each step. In his hands he carried a medical kit and portable life support equipment he had gathered from the emergency supplies. He knew what he was about. To do would end his military career, but he also knew he could not live with himself if he did nothing. The shuttle bay was empty when he arrived, the skeleton night crew busy with other duties. Pete loaded his equipment into the nearest shuttle and began the pre-flight sequence. His hands moved automatically over the controls, muscle memory from hundreds of similar preparations. As the shuttle's engines warmed up, Pete thought about his family back on Earth. His wife would understand why he had made this choice, even if it meant facing court-martial and imprisonment. She had married a man who believed in doing what was right, no matter the cost. The shuttle bay doors began to open, revealing the star-filled darkness of space beyond. Pete was about to launch when warning lights flashed and an alarm sounded throughout the bay. "Sergeant Jackson, shut down your engines immediately," came Commander Walsh's voice over the communications system. "You are not authorized for departure." Pete keyed his radio with steady hands. "I am sorry, Commander, but I cannot follow that order." Danny Walsh appeared at the entrance to the shuttle bay, flanked by 2 security officers. His face was red, with anger as he strode toward the shuttle. "Jackson, what the hell do you think you are doing?" Pete looked through the shuttle's window at his commanding officer. "I am going to help that alien, sir. I cannot stand by and watch an innocent being die when I have the means to save it." "You are disobeying direct orders," Danny shouted. "Shut down those engines and get out of that shuttle right now." "No, sir," Pete replied calmly. "I took an oath to protect innocent life, and that includes Kethvar. My conscience will not let me abandon someone who needs help." Danny moved closer to the shuttle, motioning for his security team to follow. "Jackson, think about what you are doing. This is not just insubordination. This is potentially treason. You could be putting all of humanity at risk." Pete looked at the man who had been his friend and commander for 3 years. "Commander, I have thought about this very carefully. The only risk I see is the risk of becoming the kind of people who let others die because we are afraid." The security officers reached for their weapons, but Danny held up a hand to stop them. "Pete, please, do not throw your life away for an alien we just met. Think about your family, your future." "I am thinking about them," Pete said quietly. "What kind of father would I be if I taught my children that following orders is more important than saving lives? What kind of husband would I be if I came home knowing I let someone die because I was too scared to help?" Captain Morrison's voice crackled over the communication system. "Sergeant Jackson, this is Captain Morrison. I order you to abort your mission and surrender yourself for disciplinary action." Pete looked up at the speaker and then back at Danny Walsh. "Captain, with respect, I cannot follow that order. Every moral principle I believe in tells me this is wrong." "This is not about morality, Jackson," came Jake's angry voice. "This is about military discipline and following the chain of command. You do not get to decide policy for the entire human race." "I am not deciding policy, sir," Pete replied. "I am making a choice about who I want to be as a human being. I choose to be someone who helps others in need regardless of what species they are." Danny stepped directly in front of the shuttle, blocking its path. "Pete, I am ordering you last time. Stand down now or I will have you arrested for mutiny." Pete looked at his commander and felt sadness fill his heart. These were good people who were afraid of making the wrong choice. He understood their fear, but he could not share it. "Danny, please move aside," Pete said gently. "I do not want to hurt anyone, but I am going to help that alien whether you stop me or not." "Like hell you are," Danny growled. He signaled to his security team, "Disable that shuttle." One of the security officers raised his weapon, but Pete had already engaged the shuttle's engines. The small craft shot forward, forcing Danny to dive aside as it raced toward the opening bay doors. "Jackson, stop immediately or we will open fire." Captain Morrison's voice boomed through the speakers. Pete's shuttle cleared the bay doors and entered open space. Behind him, he could see the Aurora's weapon systems powering up, but he knew Jake would not actually fire on one of his own crew members. "Captain, I am sorry for disobeying orders," Pete said into his radio, "but I could not live with myself if I let Kethvar die alone. Some things are more important than following rules." The shuttle raced toward the distant moon, leaving the Aurora behind. Pete could hear angry voices on the radio, demanding that he return immediately, but he shut off the communication system and focused on his mission. As he flew through space, Pete thought about what would happen when he returned. He would face court-martial for insubordination, mutiny, and violation of first contact protocols. He might spend years in military prison. His career was over and his family would suffer because of his choices. But when he thought about Kethvar dying alone and afraid on that cold moon, Pete knew he had made the right decision. Some things were worth any sacrifice. The moon grew larger in his window as Pete approached the crash site. He could see Kethvar's ship lying twisted among the rocks, its lights flickering weakly like dying stars. The aliens' distress signals were barely audible now, fading into the cosmic background noise. Pete landed his shuttle near the wreck and quickly put on his spacesuit. He grabbed the medical equipment and ran toward the alien ship, knowing that every second counted. Inside the crashed vessel, he found Kethvar unconscious and barely breathing. The alien's crystalline skin had lost its color and its life support. Systems were showing critical failure warnings. "Hold on," Pete whispered as he began setting up the portable life support equipment. "You are not going to die today." Working quickly but carefully, Pete connected human life support systems to Kethvar's failing body. It was difficult work, trying to adapt equipment designed for humans to support an alien physiology, but Pete's medical training helped him make the necessary adjustments. Slowly, Kethvar's vital signs began to stabilize. The alien's eyes fluttered, open, focusing weakly on Pete's face behind his helmet visor. "You came back," Kethvar whispered through its failing translator. "Why did you come back?" Pete checked the life support readings and smiled. "Because leaving you to die would have been wrong. Where I come from, we help people who need help." "But your commanders forbade it," Kethvar said weakly. "You are risking punishment for someone you do not know." "I know enough," Pete replied, adjusting the alien's breathing apparatus. "I know you are hurt and scared and far from home. That is all I need to know." Kethvar's large eyes filled with something that looked like tears. "Your species is remarkable. My people have observed many races, but few would risk so much for a stranger." Pete finished his medical work and sat back on his heels. "We are not perfect, but some of us try to do what is right when it matters." The alien's translator device sparked and went silent, cutting off their conversation. But Kethvar reached out with one delicate hand and touched Pete's gloved fingers, a gesture that needed no translation. Pete looked up through the hole in the ship's hull at the distant stars where the aurora waited. Soon he would have to return and face the consequences of his choices. He would lose his career, probably his freedom, and possibly his family's respect. But as he looked down at Kethvar's stabilizing vital signs, Pete felt no regret. He had saved a life today, and that was worth any price he might have to pay. The bridge of the Aurora felt tense as Captain Jake Morrison called his senior officers together. The discovery of Kethvar had changed everything, and now Jake faced the hardest decision of his career. Around the conference table sat his most trusted people, but their faces showed that they were far from agreement. Dr. Amy Roberts sat forward in her chair, her eyes bright with excitement and worry. "Captain, we have to help that alien. This is the greatest discovery in human history. We are talking about first contact with an intelligent species from another world." Commander Danny Walsh shook his head firmly. "Amy, you are thinking with your emotions instead of your brain. We have protocols for a reason. First contact situations require special training and equipment that we do not have." "Protocols?" Amy's voice rose with anger. "Danny, there is a living, thinking being dying on that moon while we sit here talking about paperwork." Marine Lieutenant Kate Brown nodded in agreement with Amy. "I have to support the doctor on this one, Captain. My oath as a Marine includes protecting innocent life regardless of species. That alien is helpless and hurt. How can we just leave it to die?" Lisa Grant looked uncomfortable as she spoke up from her position at the communications station. "But what if helping it puts us in danger? We know nothing about this Andorian collective. What if they see our rescue as an act of aggression or weakness?" Jake rubbed his forehead as the argument continued around him. Each person made good points, but they could not all be right. The responsibility for the decision fell on his shoulders, alone, and he felt the weight of it crushing down on him. "Think about what we would be exposing," Danny continued. "If we help this alien, we reveal our location, our ship's capabilities, maybe even our homeworld's position. One act of kindness could endanger every human colony in space." Amy slammed her hand on the table. "Listen to yourself, Danny. You are talking about letting someone die because you are afraid of what might happen. That alien called us fascinating. It said its people have been watching us with interest, not preparing to attack us. And you believe everything it says?" Danny shot back. "How do we know this is not some kind of trick? Maybe the crash was fake. Maybe this is how they gather information about other species. Pete Jackson had been quiet during most of the argument, but now he spoke up. Sir, I was there. I looked into that alien's eyes. Whatever else Kethvar might be, it is not faking its injuries. It is really dying. The room fell silent for a moment as everyone considered Pete's words. The sergeant was known for his honesty and good judgment. If he said the alien was truly hurt, then it probably was. Kate Brown leaned back in her chair. Even if there are risks, we cannot base our decisions on fear. What kind of people would we be if we let fear stop us from doing what is right? The kind of people who survive. Danny replied grimly. Kate, I understand your feelings, but we have a responsibility to our own species first. We cannot risk human lives for an alien we just met. Lisa turned from her station to face the group. I have been monitoring the alien's ship since we found it. The power systems are failing fast. Even if we wanted to wait for orders from Earth Command, there would be nothing left to save by the time help arrives. Jake felt his heart sink as he realized the truth of Lisa's words. Earth was months away, even with the fastest ships. Any rescue mission would arrive too late to help Kethvar. Amy saw the understanding in Jake's face and pressed her advantage. Captain, this is not just about saving one life. This is about what kind of species humanity wants to be when we meet other intelligent races. Do we want to be known as the people who help others in need, or as the cowards who run away when things get complicated? That is not fair, Amy, Danny protested. Following proper procedures is not cowardice. It is good sense. We have rules about first contact because mistakes can be deadly. Whose rules? Kate asked. The same Earth Command that has never encountered an alien species before? How can they write rules about something that has never happened? Jake looked around the table at his officers. These were good people, all of them. They wanted to do the right thing. But they could not agree on what the right thing was. What about compromise? Pete suggested. We could provide basic medical aid without bringing the alien aboard our ship. Keep it stable until Earth Command can send specialists. Danny shook his head. Even that violates our orders. Any contact with alien intelligence is supposed to be reported immediately, and we are supposed to withdraw to a safe distance while waiting for instructions. Safe distance? Amy's voice was full of disgust. You mean far enough away that we cannot hear it dying? The argument continued for another hour as the officers went over the same points again and again. Jake listened to all of them, weighing their words carefully. He understood both sides of the debate, which made his decision even harder. Finally, he held up his hand for silence. I have heard enough. This is my decision to make, and I have made it. The room went quiet as everyone waited to hear what their captain would decide. Jake looked at each face around the table, knowing that some of them would not like what he was about to say. We will not interfere, Jake announced. I am sorry, but we have to follow protocol. We will maintain our current position and send a full report to Earth Command immediately. Amy's face went white with shock. Captain, you cannot be serious. You are condemning an innocent being to death. I am protecting my crew and my species, Jake replied firmly. I do not like this decision any more than you do, Amy, but it is the right one according to our laws and regulations. Kate stood up, angrily. Laws and regulations? What about basic human decency? What about human survival? Danny countered. The captain is making the hard choice because it is his job to think about the big picture. Pete looked down at his hands, clearly struggling with his own feelings. Sir, are you sure this is what Earth Command would want us to do? Jake met Pete's eyes steadily. I am following General Order 7, which requires immediate withdrawal when alien intelligence is encountered. Whether I like it or not, those are my orders. Amy stood up from the table, her chair scraping against the floor. I cannot be part of this. I will not help you abandon that alien to die alone. You will follow orders, Doctor, Jake said firmly. That is not a request. The meeting broke up with angry voices and hurt feelings. As the officers left the conference room, Jake remained alone at the table, staring out the window at the stars. He wondered if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Down on the moon's surface, Kethvar's life support systems continued to fail. The alien drifted in and out of consciousness, growing weaker with each passing hour. Its translator device flickered and sparked as the power died, cutting off its last link to the humans who had found it. Pete Jackson stood in his quarters, looking out at the distant moon where Kethvar lay dying. He had followed orders his whole life, but this felt different. This felt wrong. The sergeant closed his eyes and tried to imagine explaining this moment to his children someday. How could he tell them that he had found an innocent being in need of help and walked away because his captain told him to? Outside his window, the moon continued its slow orbit around the gas giant, carrying its dying passenger through the cold darkness of space. The UES Aurora moved through space like a metal whale swimming in a black ocean. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair and watched the stars drift past the main screen. His crew of 24 humans had been traveling for 2 months on what should have been a simple job. They were supposed to map 3 star systems near the edge of human space and then go home. But 3 days ago, everything changed. Lisa Grant looked up from her communication station. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel as strange sounds filled the bridge. The sounds were not random noise or natural space signals. They had a pattern that made everyone stop and listen. "Captain, I am still getting that transmission," Lisa said. Her voice was tight with worry. "It is stronger now, much stronger." Jake leaned forward in his chair. The signal had started as a whisper 3 days ago. Now it was loud enough to hurt their ears if they turned up the volume too high. "Can you tell where it is coming from?" Lisa worked at her station for several minutes. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines and the clicking of her fingers on the controls. Finally, she looked up with wide eyes. "Sir, the signal is coming from the 4th planet in this system. There is a small moon orbiting that planet. The transmission is coming from that moon." Commander Danny Walsh stepped forward. He was a big man with gray hair and serious eyes. "Captain, this could be dangerous. We do not know what is sending that signal." Jake nodded slowly. He had been thinking the same thing for 3 days. The signal was clearly not natural. Someone or something had made it. The question was whether that someone was friendly or dangerous. "Lisa, can you understand any part of the signal?" Jake asked. The young woman shook her head. "No, sir. It does not match any language in our computers, but there is something strange about it. The pattern keeps changing, like whoever is sending it is trying different ways to talk to us." Jake felt his heart beat faster. In all the years humans had been traveling to other stars, they had never found signs of intelligent life. They had found dead worlds and empty space. But this signal was different. This signal was alive. "Danny, get a team ready," Jake ordered. "We are going to take a look at that moon." Danny Walsh gathered his team in the shuttle bay 30 minutes later. Besides himself, he took Marine Sergeant Pete Jackson and Science Officer Amy Roberts. Pete was a quiet man who always did his job. Well, Amy was young but smart, and she knew more about alien life than anyone else on the ship. The shuttle flew through space toward the small moon. As they got closer, Amy's instruments began to beep and flash with excitement. "I am reading something on the surface," Amy said. Her voice was full of wonder. "It looks like metal, but not human metal. The shape is wrong, too." Pete looked out the window at the gray surface of the moon below them. "There," he said, pointing. "I can see it." The crashed ship lay twisted and broken against the rocky ground. Part of it was buried in the dirt, as if it had hit the surface, very hard. The metal was smooth and curved in ways that human ships were not built. Strange symbols covered the hull, glowing weakly in the pale light of the distant star. Danny landed the shuttle near the wreck. The 3 humans put on their spacesuits and walked carefully toward the alien ship. Their boots crunched on the rocky ground as they moved closer to the most important discovery in human history. "Be careful," Danny warned as they approached, an opening in the ship's hull. "We do not know what is inside." Amy held up her scanner. "I am reading one life form inside. It is weak, but alive." They climbed through the twisted metal into the alien ship. The inside was dark except for a few weak lights that pulsed slowly like a dying heartbeat. The air was thin and cold, and strange smells filled their helmets. In the center of the ship, they found the alien. The creature was lying on what looked like a bed made of crystal and metal. It was roughly the same size as a human, but clearly not from Earth. Its body was covered in scales that looked like pieces of colored glass. Instead of arms and legs, it had 4 limbs that ended in delicate hands with too many fingers. Its head was large and round, with huge eyes that looked like pools of deep water. The alien saw them and tried to sit up. A device near its head made soft sounds that slowly turned into words the humans could understand. "Help me," the alien said. Its voice was soft and musical. "Please help me, I am dying." Amy knelt beside the creature. Her scanner told her that the alien was hurt badly and getting weaker. "We want to help you," she said. "What is your name?" "I am Keithvar," the alien replied. "I am a researcher from the Andorian Collective. My ship failed, and I crashed here. My life support is almost gone." Pete looked around the damaged ship. Broken equipment sparked and smoked in the darkness. The air was getting thinner by the minute. "How long have you been here?" 3 days, Keithvar answered. "I have been sending signals for help. I did not know if anyone would hear them." Danny spoke into his radio. "Captain, we have found a survivor. The alien is badly hurt and needs immediate medical help." Jake's voice came back through the static. "Copy that. Are you sure it is safe?" Amy looked at Keithvar's weak form and felt her heart break. The alien was clearly suffering and afraid. "It is not dangerous, Captain. It is just scared and hurt." Keithvar's translator device flickered as the alien tried to speak again. "My people are peaceful. We explore the stars to learn, not to fight. We have been watching your species with great interest. Humans are fascinating." The alien's eyes closed and its breathing became even weaker. The lights on its life support equipment began to flash red warning signals. "We need to get it back to the ship now," Amy said urgently. "It will not survive much longer without proper medical care." Danny looked at the dying alien and felt confused emotions fill his chest. His training told him to be careful and follow procedures, but his heart told him that letting any living thing die was wrong. "Captain," he said into his radio, "we need permission to bring the alien aboard for medical treatment." There was a long pause before Jake answered. "Negative. Do not move the alien. We need to discuss this situation first." Amy stared at Danny, in shock. "We cannot leave it here to die." Danny looked down at Keithvar, who was now unconscious and barely breathing. The alien's translator device was failing, making broken sounds that faded into silence. Pete Jackson knelt beside the alien and checked its weak pulse. "Commander, if we do not help it soon, it will be too late." Danny felt the weight of command pressing down on his shoulders. He had his orders, but he also had his conscience. Looking at the dying alien, he wondered which one he should follow.